All right, shows that we're live on YouTube and Facebook. And
Good morning, Peter.
awesome. As you guys are starting to hop on, please do start commenting and engaging with us on the video. I'll get started here momentarily. All right, perfect. Well, it looks like we are live on both our YouTube and Facebook platform. I'll go ahead and get us kicked off and started. I am Juliette Abdel, your Chamber President and CEO, and pleased to continue bringing you some live broadcasts. We are hosting these now on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Friday to provide you with information not only on COVID, but information about businesses that are in our community, welcoming them, and also support from county, state, and federal level as well. So continue to tune into our videos. Those are always available for you to watch on replay in the video section here of our Facebook page, or of course our YouTube channel, Westminster Chamber of Commerce, which leads me to my next point. If you're not already engaged with us on all of our social media platforms, please do so immediately. They are here on Facebook, on YouTube. Of course, we are also on LinkedIn, Westminster Chamber of Commerce, Instagram, and Twitter at Westy Chamber, where we share information a little bit differently, brag on different members in different ways. So make sure that you are connected with us on those platforms. Mondays are especially special for me because we always kick it off with our mayor, who gives us updates on things that are going on in our city, some updates on COVID if necessary, and additional resources that are out there for our community members. This is designed to be highly interactive. So as you are hopping onto the broadcast, please do us a favor of, one, hitting the share button on this so that others in your network can see that this is live in real time and that they can stop what they're doing and come on here with us. The second is by engaging with us with any of those emojis or reactions. Of course, we don't really care for the angry one, but you can give us that if that's how you're feeling on a Monday morning. We all struggle sometimes. And then be sure that you also engage with us through the comment section. So you've already seen a number of our followers that are already commenting. Peter Brichette sharing a nice good morning message to the mayor and to myself. I also see our past board chairman, Brian Head. Good morning to you as well. And Parker Brown. Thank you, Parker, for hopping on to the broadcast with us, especially with everything opening back and things going on in your life. I totally get that you are putting this as a priority. Of course, we appreciate Councilor Scully for hopping on here and sharing a nice good morning message both to the mayor and myself. So thank you guys for hopping onto the broadcast, tuning in. Mayor Sites, we've got a lot on our radar to visit with them about. So I'll just turn it over to you to get started and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Juliette. And I appreciate you saying you really enjoy Mondays. I do as well. And I value this partnership that we have with the Chamber and this opportunity to reach out to your membership. We do have a lot we can talk today about if we have time. First thing I want to just say is welcome and thank you to everybody who is on today listening to this, or if you're going to join later. We appreciate your desire to be involved and to learn what's going on in the city. This week is going to be a very hot week. If you have friends or family who are senior citizens, maybe keep an extra eye out for them. Make sure they stay hydrated. It's not just unpleasant to have these high heat days. It can be dangerous for folks. So really do watch out for your neighbors who might be more vulnerable to this heat wave. If it's okay, Juliette, I'd love to transition into just a recap of last week's city council meeting for folks.
Yes.
Okay. I think as many people on this webinar know, last week, council was unable to reach a consensus on an appointment to fill my position on Westminster City Council. So now this vacancy will be resolved on the November ballot. And I'm sure there's kind of questions on what does that look like exactly. And so I wanted to let you know how it will work. The voters will now select their top 4 candidates for the role of city councilor on their ballot. The candidate that receives the 4th highest vote will have the 2-year term. So that is how it works at this point. I'd like to pause now and answer if there's any questions from your membership on this. I'm happy to address them.
Absolutely. And for everyone that's hopping on here, to Wayne and a few other folks, we are just now getting into some of the meat or information for this week's update. One of those was last week's discussion by City Council for the next steps in the appointment process, which would have been a decision by council if they had reached a consensus on one candidate. Of course, that did not transpire for those of you that did watch or kind of tune in into that broadcast. And so now it is at a point where they are going to have it move to the vote of the people in November. And Mayor Seitz, as people are hopping on here and maybe anyone is thinking of any questions, so this sounds like it is combined with the existing election that's in November. So are we led to believe that there's not going to be an additional cost in doing this now on that ballot?
Well, that's a good question. And actually, that was a question that Councilor Scully asked last Monday during our deliberation. And we did not get a price last week when we asked. And in fact, we're kind of the question wasn't dismissed, but since it's part of a regular election, it's not going to have a large cost. But we did see in our packet this week that there is a cost. It's $75,000, and that's for the additional ballot, printing the additional ballot language.
75,000 for that. That's I just wrote $75. Let me add the K here momentarily.
Yeah,
that
little difference, order of magnitude or two there.
Right. So. I see Emilio. Good morning to Emilio. Of course, Dave Carpenter giving us a nice good morning to the mayor and myself. Peter is sharing with us a question, Mayor Seitz, and I will go ahead and just display it on the screen, and then I will take a second to read that for you. Peter is asking any idea of who all may be running for that position, all of the applications for the appointees, just some of them. What does that look like?
Thank you, Peter. We sometimes get so in our what we know that we forget to explain the whole picture to people. So I think that's a really good question. At this point, folks who want to go for that additional term, you would just petition onto the ballot like a typical council candidate would. And I believe the deadline for that is in August. So it would be just the exact same process. So at this point, I don't know if any of those folks who applied for the vacancy that had not already petitioned, had not already declared that they were interested in petitioning. Nobody has petitioned yet. They're not due yet. Have made that decision. That has not been something that they've articulated to the council or to the clerk's office, as far as I know.
Thank you for that question, Peter, and of course, Mayor Seitz, for getting that answered. That was very relevant because I do know that some of the people that had applied had already announced kind of their candidacy and in running, and there were some that hadn't. So it'll be interesting to see who continues on and who submits their name further. I do see on here with us Tara. Good morning, Tara. Thank you for tuning in. I see our former Mayor Pro Tem Alberto Garcia sharing a nice good morning message our way. And thank you, appreciation to the mayor and of course the chamber for these informative sessions. We thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Garcia, for hopping on here with us. This is another comment that comes to us from our past chairman, Brian Dice. So many Brians on here. I see a question from one. I'm about to read it, that it's like another one pops on here. But he shares a nice good morning message your way, Mayor Seitz. And Peter is thankful for your comment that you have just made to his question. This is a longer question, so I will display it on the screen. Not for very long because I don't want it to cover up our beautiful faces. But Brian is sharing with us a question as it relates to the appointment process. And he's sharing that during that appointment meeting, so the meeting that was held just this last week to review those candidates that applied for the appointment process, he's sharing that folks never heard why each counselor voted the way that they did. There were several times that you, Mayor, had asked your colleagues if they'd like to discuss their choices, but every time that they asked to vote a few more times before doing so, there never was a chance for people to get to hear each counselor's reasoning. And is there a reason why that didn't happen? Hasn't that been in the past something that had been discussed as far as he remembers? It seems that it's it's tough to build consensus without that open discussion.
So I actually agree with that point. So I think that's a great point. And after the interviews, actually, both Counselor Smith and I wanted to have some deliberation immediately after the interviews. At that time, the majority of the group asked to defer it until Monday night. And, as counselors, those conversations need to be held in a public forum, right? When we're discussing policy, we need to be doing that in a way that's transparent for our residents. Unfortunately, there just did not seem to be any motivation to discuss the thought process. And there might have been a sensitivity, not wanting to offend certain candidates. I can't know my colleagues' minds on this, but it is really interesting. Our process is something particularly first off, it's mandated. If we were going to change our process, we have to do that unanimously. But the discussion could have happened. But you were doing a little bit of a dance. You're trying to get to consensus, so you don't want to call out your colleagues. And I think there just didn't appear to be the will or desire from my colleagues to have a conversation on a candidate by candidate, pros and cons publicly. And so since you can't do it privately, it felt like a very, it just felt like we were doomed to an impasse from the start in some ways.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for that question, Brian. And of course, Mayor Seitz, for doing your best to answer that from the thought process of everyone that was on council. I do know that Councilor Scully's on here, and I know several others do end up hopping on throughout the broadcast. So if any of you have additional comments on that particular question as to maybe why you personally felt that you could not chime into the discussionary times that were presented by the mayor during the appointment process, love to hear it. We do want that communicative process. And I think what Brian was trying to allude to is that it's difficult to know what everyone's thinking when they're not sharing it from the dais. So I don't see additional questions on this topic, Mayor Seitz, so I'll have you transition over to one of the many others that we have on our radar for today.
Okay. Well, first off, I wanted to talk about a few proclamations that will be made both by Councilor Seymour and by Councilor Scully today. The first of which is the proclamation for Juneteenth. And I'm sure most of our viewers today are familiar with Juneteenth, but I am going to just go over the history of it because I think it's important, an important part of U.S. history and an important part of our goal to be more inclusive as a community. So dating back, Juneteenth dates back to 1865. It was June 19th that Union soldiers landed at Galveston, Texas, with news that the war had ended and that the enslaved were now free. This was 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. So it had little impact, the Emancipation Proclamation in Texas, due to the few numbers of Union troops to enforce the executive order. So now that date is celebrated. And my apologies, my computer's kind of freezing up. Across not just Texas and Galveston, but throughout the United States. And it's celebrated with festivals, rodeos, barbecues, and many other forms. So kind of taking back that deferred freedom and owning the freedom that came. So it's a huge holiday in the African American community throughout the United States, but particularly in Texas. And so we will be proclaiming that. Additionally, it is Immigrant Heritage Month this month, so we will have a proclamation, and this is a proclamation since 2014, so it's newer, but giving people across the United States an opportunity to explore their own heritage and celebrate it, and the diversity that forms the unique story of America. We are a country that benefits from the contribution of immigrants from our dawn till present day. So excited for that proclamation as well.
Mayor Seitz, if I can just quickly...
I do not know why my computer is freezing up right now. So those are two of the proclamations.
Are you still
Oh no, am I freezing up for you as well?
Just slightly.
I am. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Oh no. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, wonderful. So let me get into the meat of the agenda tonight. I have one more exciting thing to talk about, which is we will be swearing in our new municipal court judge, Judge Lontine. This was exciting, a unanimous decision by Westminster City Council. It'll be formally offered tonight, but he has been serving our city as our acting municipal judge. He is really qualified. We were so impressed with both his judicial demeanor, his understanding of the value of municipal courts, and his desire to impart justice and equity to everything he touches in Westminster. So we're excited about that tonight. So now for some hot topics that will be on the agenda as well. We will be adopting oil and gas land use regulations. As you may recall, in 2019, it was determined that cities can have some land use, expanded land use jurisdiction over oil and gas surface rights and how they're cited, which is in line with how that is a typical role for local government to make land use decisions. And so this allows us to protect public health and safety and also just other nuisances that can come from this type of development. So that will be on our agenda tonight, along with water and sewer rate recommendations. So I don't know how deep we want to get into these, but I'll just give a quick overview and reminder for folks. The city charges water and sewer rates and fees to pay for the cost of providing safe, high quality, compliant, and reliable drinking and wastewater services to our residents and to our businesses. So the costs that these rates cover include operating and maintenance expenses, payment of our debt obligations, so paying back our bonds, large-scale projects that are in the capital improvement plan, and I'm going to call that for the rest of the time today our CIP. So staff normally gives us 2-year rate recommendations for adoption, and they are presented that way. But because of COVID, we voted in 2021 to not have a rate increase. So tonight we will be looking at a rate recommendation for 2022. So as you may recall, the 2020 irrigation season was incredibly hot and dry. And the city received a significant number of customer water bill complaints. So to provide in-depth information on water rates to city council and just to the general public, before the 2022 rate setting process, we had over 10 hours of workshops that were public to go over kind of all there is to know about our water and sewer infrastructures. What are the cost drivers? What are the potential revenue sources? How do we set rates? So we had 10 hours of going over this in depth. Based off of that, council gave direction to city staff that we would like to see the lowest possible rate that allows us to make the minimally responsible maintenance and repairs so we can provide safe, reliable drinking water and wastewater services to our residents. So city staff listened. They went back to the drawing board from their original rate recommendations and looking at changes in our fiscal policy, deferring capital improvement projects, just all sorts of things, going from a 20-year bonding schedule to a 30-year bonding schedule, using reserves. They were able to come up with the lowest possible rate, which was significantly lower. So that is $700 million of savings that they took out to lower the rate over 20 years. So the rate that they came up with is at 3.98% rate increase for water and 5.5% rate increase for sewer services. So that's going to impact customers differently depending on how much you use and what tier you're in. But for the average resident who uses 83,000 gallons of water a year, it'll be a $4.19 per month additional. And that includes both water and wastewater, $4.19 additional on their bill. But we all know we don't use water the same throughout the year, right? In January, I'm not watering my grass. So to give you an idea of what that looks like seasonally, the average rate increase in January would be $3.33. And in July, it would be $6.82 per month. So that's kind of where the rate, that'll be the question before us tonight. They represent those numbers represent the lowest sustainable cost to the customers while maintaining a safe and reliable utility. So this rate increase includes a lot of very vital capital improvement projects or CIP projects. The most important of which is the construction of the Water 2025 project. And this is the replacement of the city's Semper water treatment facility. It's the highest priority project. Obviously, we need to make sure we can treat our water for our residents. I'll remind you, the Water 2025 project, we asked for community involvement from the very beginning. So we had a resident panel that looked at the needs of this, that looked at the potential siting locations and made recommendations on where this should be sited. So this is not just from city engineering, but it has the fingerprints of the community on it as well. So we will have that before us tonight to see if council will adopt this recommendation. And if not, there's a request for us to propose what can we live with. So I am sure there will be a series of questions on this. I'd like to pause and just answer them as fully as I can. And I apologize, I'm not the water utility to make the presentation, but I'm giving you what I understood from the staff recommendation.
As it relates to, so when we talk about for the residential customer, and I try to paste as much of the details that you had provided so I don't mess it up, because I think the details do matter for folks. Is there a specific threshold of gallons that they have to stay under? If that makes sense, like are there specific brackets that people would fall into, like if their usage is under 2,000 gallons or 3,000, 6,000 gallons on a monthly basis, or how does that compute into these small increases that some of them would see in January and in their July months?
Correct. So I think it's really important to note this, and there's been a lot of conversation about this that I think kind of misconstrues. 75% of our residents never get into the third tier. Even during the hottest months, even during 2020 when we were in a drought, 75% of our residents never get into our third tier. So that is above 20,000 gallons in a month, right? One of the things people don't maybe remember about our vote on water in 2018, before John Bowles was on council, is that we expanded what the first tier is. So we increased how much water you can use before you go into the second tier by 50%. So prior to that, you could only use up to 4,000 gallons before you went into the second tier, which has a higher per gallon or per 1,000 gallon rate. And now it's at 6,000. So 4,000 to 6,000. And the reason behind that is we really did want to make sure that for those low income families, for those seniors on a fixed income, that their non-discretionary water usage, that usage for hygiene, for cooking, for cleaning, for drinking, was staying within that first tier. And so after that, after 6,000, you can use between 6,000 and 20,000 and stay in the second tier. And then it is really only over that 20,000 that you pop into the third tier.
Thank you. I know there's a lot of details behind it, and so I just wanted to at least give a little bit. It's hard to summarize, but at least wanted to give some clarity for folks so that they can be following a little. I do see Mayor Pro Tem DeMont has hopped on here. Good morning to you as well. Thank you for tuning in to our broadcast. And then we've just talked on a number of items from hot button items, literally, figuratively, and literally, from the weather to some of the things that are coming up at City Council's desk this evening, including land use related to oil and gas. Of course, a few proclamations that are relevant and significant that are also included. And then lastly, we had just touched on the Water 2025 Semper facility, and of course, other rates that would be discussed. A quick question for you, Mayor Seitz, as it relates to proclamations, is it just announcements that we provide to the people that receive it? Is it onto them that they can go spread the word after it? Or how does the process work for someone to receive a proclamation, if that makes sense?
So yeah, this is a great idea or a great thing to discuss because it's been an issue. So typically, let's say you wanted to do a proclamation on the benefits of having dog parks. Let's just use that as an example. Everybody loves dogs, right? So what you would do is you would either email your city councilor or you would email the city clerk and say, I would like to have the city consider making this proclamation. Then the city clerk or the councilor that the request was given to would ask their colleagues if this is something that we would be interested in doing. And so at that point, if we get a majority of council, we'll give the proclamation publicly on our social media platforms. We'll, promote that we did it, but each different group that does the proclamation can use that the way they want to, and highlight it the way they want to. But it becomes a matter of public record, and we let people know that this is a value that we can get behind as a council.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Mayor. Councillor Seymour has also hopped on and given us a nice good morning Westminster note. Thank you for hopping on to the broadcast. There was a question earlier on that was asked by Brian if any of our fellow councillors that are hopping on here would like to comment in here as to why some of those discussions were not held on the appointee of those candidates from last week. Feel free to type it into the chat section so it could fulfill his answer. Mayor Seitz, I have one quick question for you on the water rates. We talked about residential. Is there a component of it that also touches commercial?
And I don't have off the top of my head and numbers what the commercial rate increase will be, and I can email that to you. And I can, while we're on, I can just pull it up in this as well, but I don't believe so.
No worries.
So hold on one sec.
I would throw that question your way.
When we did in 2018, when we redid our rate structures, one of the things we did was making sure that our rates were equitable for each consumer group so that nobody else was subsidizing someone else's use. And one of the things we did find was that our commercial rates were out of line and were actually too high. And so they got readjusted to be more appropriate with what the true impact on our system was. That was when we readjusted our tiers. Now when we're having rate adjustments, typically they're across the board because we've rebalanced where those rates should be. Does that answer your question a little bit?
Let me get this. I think that's great, and we can give detail a little bit later, but I at least wanted to get that answered because I know that's generally a question that arises is, how does this also impact the business community as well, and where there may be consistency if there is on the rate increases that are there. I don't want to cut into your other information that you have on here. So we can come back to them with some more details on the commercial if you would like to move forward with some of the other items that we have.
Absolutely. And if you have a question, but you just didn't feel like asking it in this forum, I think almost we have a quorum on Westminster City Council right now on this call. But I know each of my colleagues and myself are happy to answer these questions if you want to send us an email and we can give a more in-depth question. I'd recommend everybody listen in to tonight's meeting to see how it goes, to voice your opinion. You can always call in and leave a voicemail message before 12 o'clock. So we're getting close to the wire. You can also email before 12 o'clock or say that you'd like to speak live, but we have a big change tonight. Tonight is our first in-person meeting that allows public participation. So if you old-fashioned want to come speak at the dais, City Hall is open and we would love to have you there. I kind of buried the lead with that one. But City Hall is open to public participation tonight.
Yeah, that's great to know. Very exciting. And I wrote that in. Make sure that if you have any comments or thoughts you want to share at tonight's council, that you get that in before noon. And that, of course, if you want to be there in person to see the action in front of you, go ahead and head over to City Council Hall.
Okay. And I tried really hard here not to give anything that was opinion, but just stated fact from our staff report. So I definitely have strong opinions. If you want to hear my opinions, they will be on display this evening. So I want to real quick give a COVID update to you folks, and it is good news. In Adams County, as of the 12th, we saw a percent change in cases over the last 2 weeks that went down by 14.1%. So we're still enjoying that. The 3-day rolling average of daily positive cases right now is at 28.33. So that's the 3-day rolling average. The 14-day incident per 100,000 is still a little higher than Jeffco. It's at 80.91. The good news, this is what keeps us in level clear. Level clear has us at it's hospitalizations, right? And so the magic number is if we have 2 hospitalizations per day per 100,000, then we go into level blue and we lose some of the freedoms that we're enjoying right now. And so we really want to stay below that threshold. And right now we're at 0.552 per 100,000. So well below that threshold. And that's great for businesses. And that's great for being able to live like we're back to normal. And so we're well on our way. One thing that is still a cause for concern in Adams County in particular is our vaccination rate is only at 60.6%. So I would love to see that number go up, because I think as that number goes up, it just increases the chance that we're going to stay in this level clear, and our businesses can stay open. Our students will be able to go back to school. I mean, it's where we need to be, and vaccinations are proven to be a really great tool. I'd love to go through Jeffco numbers right now. Jeffco gives them a little bit different. So the 7-day incidence per 100,000 in Jeffco is at 27.8. So you can see, if you stretch that out to the 14 days, you can see Jeffco is doing a little bit better than Adams County. They give us positivity rate. So of those tested right now, 1.8% are testing positive. I think we all remember when that number was substantially higher, so that makes me happy. And their hospitalization rate is at 0.58 per 100,000 residents. This is the number that Jeffco is looking so great at. They've already they beat the July 4th goal. They are already at 72.8% of their 12 plus population vaccinated. So wow. That's great work.
Absolutely. And thank you for those numbers. Really great numbers. I saw Tara's comment. I interjected it when she was sharing that it's great data points for Jeffco. That is, or for Adams, great. That is great news for both of our counties, actually, especially during this time. I mean, in comparison to what I think former Mayor Atchison used to have, it's so much worse. Mayor Sites every time.
I know. I kind of lucked out. I get to be sunshine and rainbows, and he had to be a little more doom and gloom. So can't take credit for it, but I'm happy to report it. And we are back. We're coming back, and it's just such a wonderful opportunity. I don't know about you folks. I was out a lot this weekend, and there were a lot of residents very happy, very smiley, and happy to talk about this community.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Mayor Sites. We are actually over our time, and I know we still have like bukus of other information. So what I'll probably do is, next week, whenever we can come back with some of our priority items to be discussing. But we talked on a number of things from last week's appointment process to COVID numbers that are looking great, all the way to some of the hot button issues that will be discussed this evening on City Council. Of course, that today is the first time they're going back to in person with an audience at council chambers. So feel free to attend if you so choose. You have until noon to voice if you plan on speaking. or want to engage in any of the agenda items. Of course, thank you to all of the counselors, Mayor Pro Tem, and of course our mayor for being on here with us today and engaging on a number of items that we've thrown your way. We will be back on here for another broadcast on Wednesday. If you had questions you did not get a chance to ask, whether it was because there was just a lot of information, maybe you saw this later on, feel free to always comment it later or DM the page, and we will get that over to our mayor to provide us with those answers and details your way. Of course, if you watch this later on, give us that hashtag replay so we know you tuned in. And if you haven't already done so, hit the share button on this video so others can see it. Make sure that you're following the page so that you can get alerted when we go live. And lastly, thank you so much, Mayor Seitz, for being on here with us and giving those updates for us to be aware of and things that we should know.
It is my absolute pleasure. And thank you again for the opportunity to talk to your membership.
Of course. Well, have a great day.